Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're traveling all the way back to the year 624 CE, right into the heart of a sweeping, sun-baked desert valley in Arabia. We're going to look at a defining, absolute clash that, against all logical odds, transformed a small, marginalized, and heavily persecuted community into a world-shaping political and religious force. We are talking about the Battle of Badr.
So let's set the scene here. It's the 17th of Ramadan, exactly 2 years after the Hijrah. Dawn is just breaking over this vast desert valley. The Prophet Muhammad looks at his small band of believers. They number roughly 313 men, and we're talking mostly former slaves, poor refugees, and young converts. Now, look across the valley. Looming over the dunes, the Meccan army is assembling, 1,000 elite warriors. The stakes here are absolutely massive. We're talking survival or total annihilation. The asymmetry of these forces is incredibly stark, and yet, the outcome of this single morning is going to echo through centuries of world history.
Part 1. Roots of the conflict in 7th century Arabia.
Okay, let's dive right into this. To understand how these two armies ended up staring each other down in the desert, we really need to look at the geopolitical pressures of the time. Following the Hijrah, which was the migration of the early Muslims from Mecca to Medina to escape persecution, tensions in the region were just at a boiling point. The Muslims were trying to rebuild their lives completely from scratch, while the Quraysh tribe back in Mecca was determined to maintain their economic and political dominance. So what was the spark? The initial catalyst was actually Abu Sufyan's massive caravan. This was a colossal Quraysh trade expedition traveling from Syria down to Mecca. We are talking about 1,000 camels carrying immense wealth, an estimated 50,000 dinars. The Muslims in Medina saw a major opportunity here. Intercepting this caravan wouldn't just secure their fragile economic base, it would act as a sort of blood tax, a strategic strike to exact retribution for the property they were literally forced to leave behind and the years of aggression they had faced from the Quraysh.
But here's where things escalate. When the Meccans caught wind of this interception plan, they didn't just send guards, they mobilized a massive relief army to crush the Muslims once and for all. Just look at this breakdown. The tactical disadvantage the early Muslims faced on paper was, well, it was overwhelming. You have 313 mostly unarmored men going up against 1,000 elite warriors. The Muslims had exactly 2 horses. Meanwhile, the Quraysh had extensive heavy cavalry. The Muslims had to share about 70 camels among themselves, taking turns riding, while the Quraysh came prepared with a vast and well-fed supply train. Honestly, by every conventional military metric of the ancient world, this should have been a complete massacre.
Part 2. Intelligence and strategy, or leveling the field.
But as we know, wars aren't just fought on paper, right? They're fought with intelligence. Modern historical analysis shows just how deeply military espionage played into this conflict. Before a single sword was even drawn, both sides were maneuvering through the desert using intense reconnaissance. It was basically a high-stakes game of cat and mouse out in the dunes, with scouts desperately trying to determine the exact location and the size of the enemy forces. And this brings us to a really gripping, decisive moment. Muslim scouts managed to capture 2 Qurayshi slaves near the wells of Badr. The Prophet Muhammad interrogated them, trying to uncover the true scale of this massive enemy force lurking just behind the hills. He asked them a very simple but vital question. How many are the people? Let's actually walk through the brilliant logical deduction that followed, step by step. The captured slaves genuinely didn't know the exact number of troops. They couldn't give a number. So the Prophet pivoted. He asked, well, how many camels do they slaughter every day to feed the army? The slaves replied, 10 on one day and 9 on the next. From that single logistical detail, the Prophet instantly deduced the enemy's hidden strength. Knowing exactly how many men a single camel feeds, he calculated that the opposing army was sitting right between 900 and 1,000 men. Just incredible situational awareness. But the intelligence gathering didn't stop there. When they interrogated the slaves further about who exactly was leading this army, the scouts started recognizing the names of the most powerful, affluent leaders of Mecca. The realization was pretty chilling. The Muslims weren't just facing a standard military force, they were facing the absolute elite leadership of the Quraysh. As the Prophet famously summarized to his men, Mecca has thrown at you the choicest parts of its livers. In other words, they have sent the absolute best they have.
Now, what's really fascinating here is how the Muslims used this intelligence to secure a massive tactical advantage. Based on the advice of a companion named Al-Hubab ibn al-Mundir, who was a very experienced tactician, the Muslim army rushed forward to secure the wells of Badr. They took control of the primary water sources and then neutralized the rest. This was a game changer. It effectively forced this massive Meccan army into a severe logistical bottleneck. I mean, they literally deprived the enemy of water in the middle of the Arabian desert.
Part 3. Terrain and Tactics. The ultimate deciders.
So zooming in on the physical battlefield itself, a sudden rainstorm swept right across the valley the night before the clash, and this perfectly, almost miraculously, altered the landscape. For the Muslim camp, which was positioned up on the higher, nearer bank, the rain was a blessing. It collected in reservoirs for drinking, and the water packed the soft desert sand down firmly, giving their infantry really solid footing. But down in the valley at the Quraysh camp on the yonder bank, that exact same rain turned the flat, low ground into a muddy, marshy mess. The heavy Meccan cavalry, which was supposed to be their greatest tactical advantage, was suddenly completely bogged down in slippery mud. Just like that, the terrain itself had tilted in favor of the heavily outnumbered infantry.
Part 4. The Clash of Armies. The morning of the battle.
So, the morning arrives. The tension in the valley is just palpable as the two sides finally meet. The flow of the battle is incredibly rapid and brutal. At dawn, the armies deploy. By morning, the customary duels between champions pick things off, and the Muslim champions score critical early victories, which deeply shakes the Meccan morale right out of the gate. By midday, the main infantry engagement erupts. It's fierce, close-quarters combat, but the highly disciplined Muslim ranks hold strong against the muddy, disorganized Meccan charge. In the afternoon, we see a catastrophic collapse of the Quraysh leadership structure. Key commanders, including the fierce Abu Jahl and Ubay ibn Khalaf, are actually killed in the fray. By evening, the massive Meccan army, despite its overwhelming numerical superiority, completely routs and flees the valley.
Part 5. The Day of Criterion, or Yom al-Furqan.
Now, while modern historians love to analyze the brilliance of the tactics and the weather conditions, to understand Badr completely, we really have to look at how the participants themselves viewed it. In early Islamic sources in the Quran, this victory is not just recorded as a clever military success. It's forever known as Yom al-Furqan, the Day of Criterion, the day of distinguishing truth from falsehood. For the believers standing on that battlefield, the rainstorm, the strategic positioning, that unbelievable victory against impossible odds, those weren't just lucky tactical advantages. To them, they were absolute proof of divine support for the Prophet's message.
This deeply spiritual perspective is immortalized in Surah Al-Anfal, which is the 8th chapter of the Quran, often translated as the spoils of war. It powerfully states, "When your Lord revealed to the angels, 'I am with you, therefore make firm those who believe. I will cast terror into the hearts of those who disbelieve.'" The text completely frames the spiritual narrative of the battle, showing it as a cosmic struggle where the divine actively intervened on behalf of the vastly outnumbered believers.
In fact, according to Islamic tradition and Quranic commentary, this number here is the exact number of angels that Allah sent down to assist the Muslim army. 5,000 angels descending right into the valley of Badr to solidify the faith and morale of those 313 men. It stands today as an enduring, powerful symbol of divine providence in Islamic history.
So, the crucial point we need to take away from all this is the massive geopolitical fallout of this single asymmetrical clash in the desert. Badr was the first major military victory in Islamic history. Almost overnight, it shifted Arabian tribal allegiances toward Medina, proving unequivocally that the Muslims were a force to be reckoned with. It devastated Meccan morale and severely threatened their vital economic trade routes. But above all, it cemented the early Muslims not just as a religious group, but as a permanent, formidable political entity, truly laying the groundwork for a civilization that would soon reach across 3 continents.
Which leaves us with this final, remarkable thought. If a force of just 313 poorly equipped men could fundamentally alter the course of world history in a single morning, what does that really teach us about the intersection of unshakable conviction and brilliant, adaptable strategy? The Battle of Badr wasn't just some skirmish in the sand. It was a masterclass in overcoming truly impossible odds. It's a legacy that has fascinated historians, military strategists, and believers alike for over 14 centuries. Thank you for joining me on this explainer, and remember to keep questioning the history that shaped our world.